that better? You guys see me now? Okay. All right. So he says, "Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'seichem." Make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell among them. Make for me a mikdash is a place that is mekadosh. It's holy. It's a holy space. That was what building the mikdash was for. Was so that Hashem could dwell amongst the camp, in the camp amongst the Jewish people. So, the Frierdiker Rebbe brings in a mind with the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Says that Eimer v'asuli mikdash lashon yachid and acher kach mahu eimer v'shachanti b'seicham lashon rabin. First it says v'asuli mikdash, make for me a mikdash. It uses the singular. Then it says v'shachanti b'seicham, and I will dwell among them or within them. Right, plural. This is v'havele l'chseiv. It should have been written v'shachanti b'seichai, and I will make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell within it. Right. Why does it say b'seicham? V'hine amash kosev v'asuli mikdash maybe masha amar rizal kol makom shneimar li ein azula olam leila ba'olam hazeh v'leila olam haba. Anytime it says in Chazal, anytime the word li is introduced, that it means something that's permanent, right? Li it won't end in this world. It doesn't end in the next world. It's a permanent thing. So, v'chashiv sham beis hamikdash chulei shneimar chulei v'asuli mikdash. So it says in regards to the building of the Beis Hamikdash, it says v'asuli. It says li. So Chazal says anytime we see the word li, it means it's permanent. So it should be an obvious question. Question being, where's the Beis Hamikdash? How can we say that the Beis Hamikdash is permanent when it's been destroyed twice now? But especially right now, we're in the longest gullus, the 2,000 years now, and it says v'asuli mikdash about building the Beis Hamikdash. V'asuli li, which, as explained by Chazal, means permanent. Muvor b'zeh, to explain this, the Moshe Kosev v'asuli mikdash hainu dechol Yisrael tzrichim lasus es mikdash shahu makom l'shchina ezes uzo yisbarach. So it says that there's a mitzvah for every single person to make a mikdash, which is a place for the Shchinas Hashem, the aspect of Hashem that dwells, right? The Sheichenes, right? We say the Shechina because the Shechina is the part of Hashem which is Sheichenes. It dwells in this existence, in this world. So he says that we're supposed to make this a place. A makom l'shchinas uzo yisbarach, a place for the greatness of Hashem. V'hamikdash hazeh hu beis kedusha b'libo shel adam v'lechein hine v'shachanti b'seicham b'seichol echa v'echem Yisrael. So it's explained that when it says b'seicham, where is this makom? Where is this place for the mikdash, the place for the holiness of Hashem to be present? It says in the hearts of mankind, the hearts of people. That's where this. That's the makom. Says v'hu she'ikar hakavana hi sha'adam yiyeh b'bechinas mishkan hainu liyeh makom l'shivta sha'alukos yishkan b'nefesh begilei. That the person is supposed to make in their hearts a mikdash for Hashem, so that the Shechina, the presence of Hashem, can be placed, or he can place himself inside the hearts of mankind. So that's that. Every single one of us has this job to make ourselves holy, to make ourselves a dwelling place for the holiness of Hashem. And this ve'inyan eino zula elam shebemikdash pshutei mashma ba'amayim risham shegam tchilas ha'asiyah hu ba'efin de'eino zula elam. So this, what does this mean? Is this saying that a person is supposed to be this permanent, holy, constantly tapped in edifice for Hashem? That your heart is just supposed to always be inspired with godliness? Some of you may feel that way, and kol hakavod. Most of us normal people don't feel that way all the time, unfortunately. So what does this mean? It's saying that when a person approaches their relationship with Hashem, that it should be in a way that is permanent. Maybe not that their actual connection is permanent, but that the nature of the connection is something that lasts forever, even if it waxes and wanes. Okay. Something that won't change. The fact that you may go down, come up, it might get excited, it might be less excited sometimes, is irrelevant. The fact that the nature of your relationship is one that is forever, that's what it means, that it's created in an oifen of li, something that doesn't change. Right? So he says, this is the way that a person is supposed to approach their relationship with Hashem. That it's done in a way that it's not faltering. It doesn't falter. And also it's brought down that all of the levels and all of the aspects of the building of the Mikdash, meaning the vessels and also the walls and the roof, correspond to the two different aspects of a person, especially as it pertains to their service of Hashem, their relationship with Hashem. So the Kalim goes on the internal, the deeper relationship, and the walls and the roof and the ceiling goes on this encompassing aspect, right? This idea of being surrounded by this aspect of godliness. Now the difference there is something that surrounds might be on a higher level, but it's not felt. It's not tangible to the individual, as opposed to something that's internal, like the vessels, the kalim, go inside because that's an internal thing, right? So this idea that the vessels represent the internal, the pneumius of the person, or their aspects, or their ability to kind of tap into their innermost aspect of themselves as it pertains to that relationship, that goes on the vessels. And then the walls and the roof goes on the all-encompassing aspect, which is why it goes on this idea of the walls and the roof. Now, as it pertains to our connection here, this goes on two separate ideas. So first of all, it's brought in a mimer from the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. It says that the main idea, the main purpose for the building of the Mikdash is to reveal godliness. The whole purpose of building the Mikdash was so v'shachanti b'seichu, so Hashem could dwell amongst the people. So this is exactly, so what this is it's the idea of bringing or making the holiness of God come through the structure of creation and actually be in this physical world, right? So there's the unknowable God, this high level of the infinite God, and then there's, I won't get into the details, but there's a system he created where there's a concealment, there's a chain of existence, which is deeper and deeper concealment of his awareness, so that this leads to our ability to exist or perceive our existence as being separate from him, or, God forbid. But this is the idea of this va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham, was, so when it says v'shachanti, is that the aspect of God that is able to dwell in our existence can dwell within us, or dwell amongst us, right? And so this is the idea of the Shechina, right? That it's Shechenes. So the aspect which can dwell. And so he goes on to explain that the roof, the walls, the sides, this goes on the idea of a makifim, the light of God that's above our understanding, the light of God that is the unknowable aspect of God. And the idea is to bring this level down into our innermost, the felt, the rational self, to this idea of, loving Hashem irrationally, connecting to this idea of this unknowable God, and then doing it in a way that it's personal. It turns into like a personal relationship. Okay? So this idea is done by bringing the light of the external, this makif, into the inside, bringing it into the vessels. So now, when we revisit this idea of the building of the Mikdash, what happens? Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, in this parsha, he says, build the Aron, he lists the Kalim, and then he says, and then build the edifice, right? Build the walls and the roof, right? But he starts with the Kalim. But then later in Parshas Emor, when Moshe Rabbeinu then carries that out and tells Bezalel to build it, he says it the opposite way. He says, build the edifice, the walls, the roof, the ceiling, and then he says, build the Kalim, to make the Kalim. So Moshe Rabbeinu has a decision to make. How do I bring this now to Bezalel? So he tells Bezalel, I'm going to just say the way he did it just now. The way that Hashem just told me to do it, that's how I'm going to tell Bezalel now. I'll forward that idea. So he tells, or rather the first way. He tells Bezalel the initial thing that he said. So he says, build the Kalim, and then build the actual outside. And Bezalel says, "Minhag shel Adam, boi nedira va'achar kach machnis l'soicha kelim." The way of the world is you build a house and then you put the furniture in it. You don't buy the furniture and then build the house and put them in it. So he says, it says in Masechta Brachas, I think this is brought. Yeah, Masechta Brachas. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu responds to Bezalel. It says Amar le Betzel Kel. Bezalel is the letters Betzel, meaning in the image of, and then Kel, Aleph Lamed, God. It says that Hashem. He says about Bezalel that you're the image of Hashem, meaning you understood the kavanah. He understood the kavanah. He says, listen, Bezalel says this is just the way of the world. It's the way of the world in a physical sense. When we build a house, and then we get the furniture and the vessels that go inside. But even on a deeper level, even when it comes to the Seder Shtalshelus, the way that the world was created, that he has the outside, the encompassing light and the aspects of Hashem, and then he fills the void with life, the pneumius. Okay. So this is exactly how the service or our daily relationship with Hashem goes. First we start out, we say Moedeh Ani. And Moedeh Ani is the level where everybody is the same. This level where Hashem, we're talking about Hashem as he is a melech and how he is above even the lowest part of creation. This is why we don't have to wash our hands before we say. Before we say brachas, before we say Hashem's name, we have to wash negelvaser and purify our hands before we say Hashem's name. But by Moedeh Ani, we're discussing such a high madrega of Hashem that it's the level that can't even be touched by the impurities of this world. So we say Moedeh Ani. Then after Moedeh Ani, we wash. Then we say the brachas, and we say more brachas, and we daven, and so everything becomes more focused, and it becomes a pneumius. So this is the idea, that the walls and the roof, which surround a person, represent the connection with Hashem as it pertains to above rational thinking. That above our logic and above, the way that it says tam v'das, right? Rational thinking. So it begins with above rational thinking, and then we take that very high, that potent level of that connection to Hashem, that it doesn't even make sense. It just is. And this is a powerful connection. Then we bring that inside. And we put that, like the Kalim, inside. Now, it's interesting to note, Rashi says elsewhere, he says that when it says li, it says lishmi. That va'asu li, when he says li, that means lishmi, for my name. Now, normally we would think, not for Hashem, but for my name. If Hashem is saying, it doesn't say li for Hashem, but me, lishmi, for my name, this is seemingly on a lower madrega, right? To say, especially in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it brings that the level of Hashem that is nameable. Anytime we say a name of Hashem, that this is limiting. Just the name in and of itself is limiting in some regard. So by saying to Hashem, to the infinite, to the Ein Sof, that would be a high level, high madriga. But it seems like Rashi is now downgrading the Beis HaMikdash Chas v'Shalom. So he has to explain that. So the Rebbe explains it by, there's a Kabbalah Sefer that says that even though we say that a name is limiting to Hashem, it does say that Shem Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the four-letter name of God, even though there are lower levels of its manifestation, which mean a particular, it says that the names of Hashem correspond to the different ways that he manifests, and the relationship and the way that the interaction is taking place gives us a sense of what's going on, or what aspect of Hashem is being brought forward. And so even the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the four-letter name of Hashem, is technically one of these in certain aspects. But it's brought in a Kabbalah Sefer, is actually a Talmud of Abu Lafia. He says that Shem Havaya, without letters and without nikudas, is actually Hu Shem Ha'etzem v'Shem HaMuforish v'Shem HaMeyuchad. That it's actually Hashem himself. It's Hashem, the highest level. So we would think V'shachanti b'soicham, that V'shachanti obviously goes on the Shechina, the aspect of Hashem that can dwell in this world. But we know that that's the level of Elokim. That's the lower level of Hashem. It made sense that was V'shachanti b'soicham meant that level of Hashem. So when Rashi says V'asu li lishmi, he's actually saying that it's even higher than before. Before we understood it to mean V'shachanti b'soicham, the Shechina. And Rashi is saying, no, it means the highest level of Hashem. The part of Hashem that we can't even describe. That even though we say there's no name, that this name and this derivation of the name, that it's even above the idea of Haya, Hoiva, V'Yehiyeh. That the name of Hashem, the four-letter name, goes on. It's an acronym for is, was, and will be. So according to Kabbalah, that Shem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei without nikudas and without letters, whatever that means, is Hashem even higher than that Madrega. Now, the Rebbe ends this very interestingly, almost like in the style of a Sikha, as he explains that this level, this idea of B'soicham, and it says in Midrashim, it says Kol Echad V'Echad, but it says that the Kavana is that it's Kol Echad V'Achas, meaning also the women at the time, not just men but women as well. And he says, and not that we would say the men and then the women, but Fakir, Ta'adarabba, he says that it's actually that the women came first and the men followed. That the women were the first to bring their contribution to the Beis HaMikdash. And also by the giving of the Torah, that it says that Hashem gave the Torah to the women. It says the house of Yaakov. And that the house was an allusion to women, that it says, give the Torah to the women, and then the women will give it to the men. Or then give it to the men. So we see here that not only is it not true that the women came after men, but that the women came first. They led the way. And he says, the reason that I'm mentioning it is because there have come along people who claim that women are not even equal to men, let alone that they come first, which is clearly the case. And he says that anybody that knows Torah, he says it should be, right? He says, halavai, it should be that we can all go back to the understanding globally in the Jewish world, back to the original understanding, which is that the women come first. And he says, and this idea is exemplified with the whole inyan of making this world a dir b'tach tainim, making this world a house for Hashem, right? And he says, v'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham, to make this place a house for Hashem, and the women make this place a house, from a house into a home. That they're the ikar of the whole idea of this whole inyan of building a home for Hashem. It lands with women. That women are the ones who actually see that all the way through. So when it says Kol Echad V'Achas, that's what it's referring to. And he says, why was it necessary for me to bring this? Why was it necessary that somebody would come along and say something that's contrary to this notion? It brings a concept in halacha that if there's a document which is questionable, a shtar is questionable, and somebody brings it, and then there's a challenge on the shtar. When it's brought to a Beis Din, and the Beis Din go through all lengths to find out the validity of this shtar, once the Beis Din establishes that the shtar is kosher, it's a wrap. The shtar is actually stronger now than it was before there was even a chash. Before there was even a shaila on the shtar, a question on the shtar, it was a shtar, but there was a question, and now because of that question, it being proven wrong made it stronger than it was before. So he says that ultimately must be the reason this happened, so that he could have the opportunity to clarify that not only are women equal, but that the women came first in several, not just several of the halachas, in several of these major impactful moments in Jewish history, but the most impactful moments of history, meaning building the Mikdash, which brought Hashem into this world, and also the giving of the Torah. And he says that it should be that by way of Moshe Rabbeinu, who was able to actually create this reality, and because Hashem gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu to then tell the people that we should be zeiche to rebuild the third Beis HaMikdash by, and then continue this idea of the Dir B'tach Tainim by the third Beis HaMikdash, which is a permanent edifice, which brings back and circles back to the idea of Li being permanent. That also this physical Beis HaMikdash, the third Beis HaMikdash, with the coming of Mashiach, B'mhira V'yameinu Mamash.